As Emily took one last bite of her birthday cake, she glanced at the clock and realized how late it was. A wave of panic washed over her as she remembered that her mother was going to be in town early in the morning. She quickly stood up, thanking her friends for the wonderful birthday surprise they had thrown for her. She called out for Max, her loyal companion, who had been patiently waiting for her. Her friends, concerned for her safety, suggested she stay the night. However, Emily knew that if she stayed, she'd likely oversleep and miss her mother's arrival. All right. But remember, if you hear something, no, you didn't. Her friends remarked as they said their goodbyes. Those were the exact words she heard all her life growing up in the Appalachian Mountains. The party's warmth and laughter faded into the background as Emily and Max set off through the dense forest. A sense of unease began to creep over Emily as the forest seemed more alive. Max, too, seemed on edge. His ears perked up, and his pace quickened. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the moonlight ahead. A woman standing in the path. "Emily, is that you?" "It's so cold out here," the woman called out, sounding eerily like her mother. Max growled. As Emily drew closer, she realized with horror that something was terribly wrong. The figure's eyes were too bright, too unnatural, and there was an unsettling stiffness in her movements. A sense of dread washed over Emily as she remembered the old tales of skinwalkers, beings that could mimic the voices and appearances of loved ones to lure their victims. As Emily and Max sprinted toward the cabin, the skinwalker's voice grew louder and more distorted, a chilling blend of her mother's voice and a sinister, otherworldly tone. Max started barking. Emily glanced back and saw a horrifying sight. The figure of her mother, now clearly not human, with glowing eyes and a twisted, snarling expression. The skinwalker moved towards them with a speed that seemed impossible for a human. Max barked again and leaped toward the creature, ready to defend Emily at all costs and let her go ahead of him. The skinwalker, however, seemed prepared for this, quickly dodging Max's attack with a swift, fluid motion. As Emily reached the cabin, she could hear the sounds of Max's growls and the skinwalker's eerie, mocking laughter behind her. She fumbled with the keys, her hands shaking with fear, and finally managed to unlock the door. With one last desperate look back, she saw Max holding his ground, facing off against the skinwalker. Emily rushed inside, slammed the door shut, and quickly formed a protective line of salt at the threshold. Emily whispered a prayer for her loyal companion, hoping that the protective measures would be enough. She rushed to secure every window and entrance, her hands trembling with each lock she fastened. Outside, the howls of the skinwalker grew more desperate. Max's barks were relentless. Emily peered through a crack in the curtains, her breath catching in her throat at the sight before her. The skinwalker, in its grotesque imitation of her mother, paced back and forth, its eyes burning with a malevolent light. It seemed to be searching for a way in, its form shifting and twitching unnaturally. Suddenly, it stopped and locked eyes with Emily, its gaze piercing through the darkness. "Emily, my dear, why won't you let me in? It's so cold out here," the skinwalker pleaded in a voice that eerily resembled her mother's. "I've come all this way for your birthday, and you leave me out in the dark?" The creature then turned its attention back to Max, who stood his ground bravely. In a swift motion, the skinwalker lunged at Max, causing Emily's heart to skip a beat. But Max, with his quick reflexes, dodged the attack and made a break for the cabin door. Emily quickly opened it just enough for him to slip through before slamming it shut again. With Max safely inside, the skinwalker's voice grew more insistent. "Emily, sweetheart, please open the door. I want to make sure you're safe." But Emily knew better than to fall for the skinwalker's deceitful words. The Skinwalker, now furious at being rejected, began to throw itself against the door with terrifying force. As the hours dragged on, the Skinwalker's attacks became more frenzied, its howls echoing through the forest like the cries of a tormented soul. Emily just hugged Max tight and listened to music. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to break through the darkness, the howls outside started to fade. The Skinwalker, defeated by the coming daylight, let out one final enraged cry before retreating into the depths of the forest. Emily collapsed to the floor, exhaustion and relief washing over her as she hugged Max. Shortly after the terrifying encounter, Emily called her mother, only to learn that her flight had been delayed. Throughout the day, Emily and Max stayed close, each providing comfort to the other as they tried to shake off the remnants of fear. And as night fell, Emily turned on every lamp in the cabin. She double-checked the locks on the doors and windows, the salt line still intact from the night before. The hours ticked by, and Emily's anxiety grew with each passing minute. Finally, a knock came at the door. Emily's heart leaped into her throat. Peering through the window, she saw her mother standing on the porch, her luggage in hand. Rushing to the door, Emily threw it open and embraced her, tears of relief streaming down her face. But as she pulled away, Emily's heart skipped a beat. There was a flicker of something in her mother's eyes that didn't quite belong there. "Are you okay, honey?" the figure said in her mother's voice, but something was off. A cold realization washed over Emily. She hadn't hugged her mother. She had embraced the Skinwalker. Panic surged through her as she pushed the creature away and slammed the door shut. She fumbled with the lock, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Outside, the Skinwalker let out a loud, chilling laugh. "Won't you let me in to celebrate your birthday?" Emily backed away from the door. Suddenly, she heard another knock, softer this time, coming from the back door. Peering through the window, she saw her mother standing there, confusion and fear on her face as Emily just stared. "Emily, what's going on? Why won't you let me in?" her mother asked. The Skinwalker, sensing its opportunity, began to mimic her mother's pleas. Emily's mind raced as she tried to distinguish between the two voices. In a moment of clarity, she remembered a secret her grandmother had once shared. A special knock, a family code that only they knew. Pressing her face close to the door, she called out, "Mom, do the knock! Do the knock!" After a tense moment, she heard it, the familiar rhythm of the secret knock. Relief flooded through her as she quickly opened the door and pulled her mother inside, locking the door behind them. Together they watched as the Skinwalker shifted and changed in the moonlight. Emily and her mother held each other close. As Max growled softly, in a desperate bid for safety, Emily's mother remembered an old family legend about a talisman hidden in the cabin, said to possess the power to repel evil. With no time to lose, Emily and her mother searched frantically, rummaging through the old boxes. Finally, in a dusty old chest, Emily's fingers closed around a small, intricately carved amulet. As soon as she touched it, a warm, pulsing energy coursed through her body. Outside, the Skinwalker sensed the presence of the talisman, and its howls grew even more frenzied. Emily approached the door, holding the amulet out in front of her. With a deep breath, she flung the door open. The Skinwalker recoiled as if struck by an invisible force. Emily stepped forward, the amulet glowing brightly in her hand, casting a protective light around her and her home. "Leave this place and never return," she commanded, her voice steady and filled with an authority she didn't know she possessed. The Skinwalker let out one final ear-splitting howl before disappearing into the forest. Emily and her mother embraced as dawn broke. Emily turned to her mother smiling. She was grateful for the gift of another day. She knew that no matter what shadows lurked in the corners of the world, she had the strength to face them as long as she had her mother by her side.